Yeah. Well,
Call this meeting to order. And before we start, I just want to read a quick statement and you'll understand more later. I would normally serve as a chairperson for these proceedings in Court Chappelle's absence. While not legally precluded from serving as a member of this planning commission and participating in this decision-making process, I still want to avoid any appearance of impropriety. For that reason, I'm stepping aside and will not serve as chair for this hearing. Instead, I'd like to nominate Sally Cohen to chair this hearing. I'll say that. Yeah, so I guess I'll move in favor. Aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. I will.
Turn the volume up, please.
Oh, that's on.
yeah.
Okay, the chair is too tall for me.
That's why they have this next one.
And then, yes, if you would pull your microphones close.
Thank you, Alex. So I guess we're at roll call, Karen?
Yes.
Please.
Alex Perez,
Here.
Sally Cohen,
Here.
Becky Day,
Here.
Jordan Carpenter,
Here.
Jose Oliveros,
Here.
and Chair Corby Chappelle is excused.
So we have minutes from 2 prior meetings in March that we need to approve. 2 separate meetings, so I think we probably need to do it separately. We have our regular meeting, March 6th, the planning commission. Everyone have a chance to review those.
Yes.
Any additions, corrections? If not, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from March 6th. Becky moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Secondly, we had a joint work session March 6th with our planning commission and historic preservation commission. Anyone have any adjustments to those minutes? A motion to approve?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Gordon, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on our agenda, we normally have a chance for visitors and public comments. And this would be about something other than the items that we are addressing today in our public hearing and our other agenda items. So if there's anything anyone wants to speak in other than those 2 items. Right. I don't believe we have any unfinished business. So it's time for a new business, Fred.
Perfect. So it's gonna be the public hearing. So if you would like to receive that.
That's my turn.
Yep.
All right, thank you. I'm not really in the backup chair. Thank you. I now open the public hearing on SDR -2023-01. It's 7:04 p.m. My name is Sally Cohen. I'm the chairperson for this hearing. This hearing will be conducted in accordance with the Independence Development Code and state laws ORS 197.763. Specifically, the staff will first present the staff report and recommendation. The applicant will then have an opportunity to present the proposal and address any issues raised by the staff report and recommendation. For public testimony, I will first ask to hear from people who would like to speak in favor of the proposal. I will then ask to speak for people who have neutral comments or questions about the proposal, neither for nor against. And then finally, third, those in opposition to the proposal will have an opportunity to present testimony. City staff may then present additional material and recommendations based on the public testimony. The applicant will be given the opportunity to have the last word. After each presentation, I will ask for questions from the commission. If you intend to present oral testimony, please fill out a request to speak form located at the front of the room, and give that to Karen Johnson, city staff. We are recording this hearing, so please also clearly state your name and address when you are called to speak. This will help in preparing accurate written minutes of the hearing and also assist with mailing copies of the decision to all interested parties. If you have written testimony or other evidence to submit, please give that to staff so it can be entered into the record. Given the number of people present, we will ask that each speaker limit themselves to no more than 5 minutes. Please remember that all presentations will be timed. You will be informed when your allotted time has expired. All speakers exceeding the time limit will be asked by the chair to immediately conclude his or her remarks. If you do not finish your presentation, be sure to provide a copy of your statement to the staff. In order to minimize repetitive testimony, organizations are encouraged to have only one person speak for the group, with other members of the organization standing to show their support. Each person may testify only once, unless called back to the podium at the request of a commission member to respond to a question. We thank you for your cooperation. Conflicts of interest, ex parte contacts, or bias. The commission is required to disclose any conflicts of interest and ex parte contacts that we have with the proposal or the applicant. That is, whether we have any financial or other personal interest in the proposal and whether we have spoken with anyone about the proposal outside of this hearing. Also, commissioners may only participate if we can do so without undue bias either for or against the application. Do any planning commissioners wish to make disclosures?
I'd like to read.
Go ahead, Allison.
I'm employed by the Strategic Economic Development Corporation, known as SEDCOR, and have had prior knowledge of the development proposal before us today. I have visited the Western Interlock River facility and worked with our marketing coordinator to run a story on their manufacturing operation in our quarterly enterprise magazine in fall 2021. In regards to this project, I've been in 2 conversations with Wyatt and Landy Pegg, in which we discussed the early stages of the project before property acquisition, stormwater planning, state programs that could possibly assist the project, and general project planning. SEDCOR is a 501c6 organization that focuses on trade sector economic development for our region. While we are a membership organization, Western Interlock is not a member, and I do not have anything personal to gain from the site design review application being heard today. My current employment, prior experience to the application and the proposed development, and prior conversations expressing preference for the proposal will not and have not caused me to prejudge this application. I entered this hearing without preconception. I understand my responsibility as a decision maker in this quasi-judicial setting. I take my role seriously and know that I need to set aside my personal views I may have to remain unbiased during this process. I am confident in my ability to sit impartially and listen to testimony. And when asked to make a decision on this application, I will set aside any personal views and evaluate, discuss, and vote solely based on the factual record and applicable land use criteria.
Do any other commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any challenges from the audience as to conflicts of interest, ex parte contacts, or bias related to any member of the community? Seeing none. State law requires me to tell you a number of things at the beginning of the hearing. First, the applicable substantive criteria that apply to this application are contained in the written staff report and will be identified and discussed in the oral staff report. Second, your testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or development code that you believe apply to this application. ORS 197.63, Section 5, Section B. Third, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker or other people an opportunity to respond may preclude appeal of this decision on this application based on that issue. ORS 197.63, Section 5C. Finally, to the applicant, failure to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. ORS 197.9796, Section 3B. We will now hear the staff report.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So hi, everybody. My name is Fred Evander. I'm the city planner here at the City of Independence. And thank you all for coming to this hearing tonight. We really appreciate an involved and informed citizenry. And so we thank you for your participation. What this public hearing is about is Western Interlock proposal on Stryker Road and Hoffman Road. And Karen, can you pull up that staff report so I can kind of point to some stuff as we're going through? What I would like to do is just kind of give an overview of the staff report, an overview of the site, and some of the key sort of substantive criteria that the planning commission is going to consider tonight. Then the applicant will be allowed to talk and explain the proposal in more detail. And then anyone else that would like to talk is more than welcome to talk. So can you go down to page 11, please, Karen? Page 11. Perfect. So just to sort of orient ourselves to the site here, we've got Stryker Road to the west. This is the air park. Can you scroll down just a hair, maybe zoom out just a hair bit, Karen? Zoom out. Perfect. So you can see this is the existing access for the fertilizer storage back in here. This would be an employee entrance, employee parking. The majority of the truck access to the site would occur from the south via Ash Street and Hoffman Road. The majority of the employee access would occur via Stryker Road. This would be the building here. The building is proposed to be 89,000 square feet. There has been some information going around that said that the building would be 170 feet tall. It's not 170 feet tall, it's actually 70 feet tall. That was just based on a slight typo. And something that's a 70-foot tall building, that is the allowed height in the heavy industrial zone. Sort of continuing on, there will be a covered storage area back in the back. This would be where the majority of the product produced would be out here. They would bring in aggregate, dump them in this hopper right here, be able to turn around and exit the site. Picking up materials, they would be able to come in here. And again, the majority of the employee entrance would be right here on the site. Sort of, I guess, continuing on, just a little bit to orient ourselves to the building. Can you show the next page, please, Karen? So this would be the building itself. You can see here's that hopper, here are the aggregate storage areas. The majority of the building is built around one fundamental process. It's a press that presses dry cast concrete block, right? Is that and it essentially goes through the process in a very automated manner. There's at their existing site at Rick Reel, a bunch of it is automated. So all of this stuff comes through here on conveyor belts and eventually gets to the end where the product is wrapped and then stored. All right, so continuing on, I should say that this would be an administrative portion of the building up here at number 1. Continuing on, maybe we should, there are a couple of pictures of the building on page 13 of your packet. You folks can see those. They're going to be shifted so it's easier for us to put on its side. Okay. All right, so based on all of that stuff, there are a number of criteria for us to evaluate as part of the proposal. You will note those criteria in the staff report right at the start. Those include subchapter 11, subchapter 41, which is the heavy industrial zone, subchapter 54, which is the buffering, screening, landscape, and aggregate setback requirements, subchapter 73, which is parking requirements, and subchapter 80, which are the site design requirements. To save everybody a whole lot of time, I'm not going to go through those one by one, but I will identify some key issues that have been raised in comments, the majority of which goes specifically to the industrial performance standards, which are in subchapter 37, but are referenced in subchapter 41. So going to that section, there's been questions raised about what sort of heat exhaust would come from the building, what sort of lighting would come from the building, what sort of noise would be generated by the building, what are the water impacts of the building, what are the vibrations that would be occurring from the building, all of that sort of stuff. The majority of those fall directly into that subchapter 37 in the industrial performance standards. You will note my responses to all of those issues on page 20, going through then page 22 of the staff report. Just some key things that I'll raise, the lighting. Details about the lighting have not been thoroughly provided at this point, and so one of the recommendations that I put on the application is that all lighting shall be shielded and directed downward. It's basically it's out of our code, and all fixture design would have to be approved by the City of Independence before it's installed. So that's sort of how this works. If there's a deficiency, we install or we recommend a condition which you folks can then consider, and we try and identify any potential impacts that might be there and address them with the condition. That's essentially how my job works, at least as part of it. So going through these, a number of those issues that have been raised, we have tried to establish conditions. Noise, let's take noise. Can you go back to page 10, please, Karen? The building is, and the use is proposed to be an industrial use. It does create a product. It does have noise. The majority of that noise occurs from various different sources. One of them is the press itself, which is a very large press that makes this. The press, as it's proposed by the applicant, would be encased in a sound dampening room. That would reduce the decibels of the press significantly. It says within the one of the attachments that it would take it down to 85 decibels just outside of the room. That still would be inside of the larger building, which would reduce the sound still further. Also, if you could get back to page 10, Karen. Oh, the next one, I'm sorry. You will note that the building is set back very far from Stryker Road itself. This setback proposed, and it's always really hard to look at a two-dimensional sheet of paper and get a sense of the actual distance. This setback to right here from the street would be 165 feet. A comparison is the Cabinet Works building on Hoffman, which is also an industrial building. Is everybody familiar with that? That is set back 175 feet. This would be set back 165 feet, and it would also include a landscaped berm, which is roughly 44 or 45 feet wide and 6 feet high, and has landscape. I guess I bring that up because when I look at things like noise, I try and evaluate where are those noise impacts going to occur? And are they situated in a good location on the site? And my answer to this site is yes. The majority of the truck traffic that will occur will be over here. It will be shielded from residential buildings by the building itself. Also, forklift traffic and conveyor belts and all of this storage and delivery will occur back here. We can look at the press itself and say, well, the press will potentially be loud, but again, the press is roughly 280 feet from a property line with a berm between it will be 280 feet from a property line in a sound dampening room inside of a larger building, right? And it will have a berm between it and the nearest residential property. Also, yeah, I guess also things like ongoing noise, like dust collection systems and whatnot, will be on the east side of the building as well. So, so that is those are some of the things that I evaluated when I looked at noise. I also took a decibel reader out to their existing plant. We took a tour of their plant last 2 weeks ago, on a Thursday, a couple of weeks ago. And I took a decibel reader out there. And when I was standing, they don't have a sound enclosing room or a sound dampening room at that plant. But when I stood inside of an operations room, I got down to 85 decibels within that plant. And again, that was still inside of the building, a larger building. All right. Continuing on, having said all that, I evaluated all of those things for noise, and the standards simply says noise shall be muffled and shall not be objectionable due to intermittence, frequency, shrillness, and shall not exceed the standards established by the State Department of Environmental Quality. So I evaluated all of those things. I felt ultimately that they're doing as good as we could anticipate for a use like that to muffle the sound. However, I still recommended the condition the applicant shall meet the Department of Environmental Quality standards for noise. So it's sort of like a belt and suspender sort of approach. They're likely going to meet it, but if they don't, they still have to meet this Department of Environmental Quality standards. Continuing on, another issue that's been raised through this, through a number of comments, is issues associated with vibration. The press itself, again, is large. It's a large press. And details about the press are included in one of the attachments. Let me find it. It's everything. I'll look at it. It's attachment F. Attachment F. Let me see if I can find it. Almost there. Wonder. So, so the manufacturer of the press provided this information about the press, and it says to ensure that vibration is not transmitted to any other location inside or out of the plant, 2 measures have to be taken. The foundation has to be properly designed regarding the shape, size, weight, so that basically the foundation absorbs the vibration completely or nearly complete, and the foundation has to be properly isolated all around to the soil and ground by suitable isolation and dampening materials, so that even transition by rocky subground or groundwater is avoided. That is what that the manufacturer said about the vibration. You will note in the staff report, and should I lost my place now. That 22. That the recommended condition is essentially an engineer showing that those measures have been done to ensure that vibration doesn't occur beyond in a way that's a nuisance to the public, or does not endanger the health, welfare, or safety of the public. Again, again, the press itself is going to be 280 feet from the property line. That's 340 some feet from the nearest residential property. When we visited as staff the existing press and the existing plant, we did not notice vibration. I don't know how far, but when we're standing even within 150 feet, we didn't notice any vibration from that. I know that the circumstances are different on this site. I'll just say that we have looked at this. We understand the process, and we feel like so long as an engineer shows that those steps are able, that have been done, that condition can be met regarding vibration. Another thing that we've heard a lot about is dust and things like silica and particulates. Right now, the standard that you folks have to evaluate something like that is in on page 22. It says no activities shall be conducted in the industrial zones which will cause the emission of noise, vibration, residue, discharge, or odor which is offensive to the community. That is a really hard standard to identify how to evaluate that, because what constitutes an offense to one person is not necessarily an offense to another person. It's just very difficult to identify what is objectively offensive to the community. That being said, again, through the site design, the majority of things that might be offensive to the community have been situated on the east side of the building. The rock chute, which I would love, if we get back to page 11, Karen, I'm sorry. Got to do some practicing before we take this on the road, huh? This chute right here is it's 218 feet from the property line. So just as a sense of context, that is where they will dump aggregate. The aggregate that they use is wet as it comes. It has been cleaned. So it's so the degree of dust transmittal is less than you see in some operations. Given all of that stuff, again, we don't see that the proposal could produce something that would be objectively offensive to the community. That being said, there are standards beyond ours that we do believe we should apply a condition to reference, and the condition that I recommend referencing is just that any sort of permits that they need to receive from the Department of Environmental Quality, they receive those permits prior to operation. So you'll see kind of how that stuff works. Now, I know that there's other issues that have been raised, but let me just go through a couple of other things real quick. Go to, please, Karen, page 25. Under the existing sort of getting out of those industrial performance standards, going into the subchapter 54, which is landscaping requirements and buffering requirements. Can you show that picture of that berm, please? Perfect. You will see that in the standards for 54010, but it says in section B, buffering shall be used to mitigate adverse visual impacts, dust, noise, or pollution, and to provide compatibility between dissimilar adjoining uses. Where buffering is determined to be necessary, one of the following buffering alternatives shall be employed. And it goes through and it says, hey, you can use a planting area and it can be 15 feet wide. It can have deciduous plants, or it can be a berm plus a planting area. So that berm would be 10 feet wide and you would have a certain type of plants on it, or it can be 5 feet wide and you got to include a wall. These folks, as part of this application, have proposed a berm that's 44 or 45 feet wide. It's 6 feet tall. It's a significant berm. You'll note too that they included, they're showing deciduous trees out here. They're showing a hedge at the top of the berm to make the berm even taller. I bring all that up because the standards say either 5 feet or 15 feet, and and you have a wall or not, you know, sort of thing. This is much more significant, and it includes the deciduous trees from the planting area requirement, and it includes the screening area from the berm plus planting area requirement. So in that regard, especially this would be along Stryker Road. In that regard, it more than exceeds the standards within the Independence Development Code. One more thing I'll add, I don't want, like I say, I don't want to talk too long, so I apologize for a while. I'll point you to subchapter 73 real quick. One question that was raised was about parking and the parking requirements under the Independence Development Code. The application it's a 89,000 square foot building. The application should require anywhere from 89 to 127 parking spaces. Again, this building is fairly highly automated. They anticipate employing, I think it says in the proposal, 35 individuals over 2 production shifts, or 15 people each shift. 15 people likely don't need 89 parking spaces, so they proposed 54 parking spaces, which is still higher than would occur in both shifts combined. So based on that, that makes sense. Also, I'll say that it does make sense to allow less parking, because in this circumstance, they have more than enough land if they ever do if they ever do need that parking. I won't go into that. So based on all of this stuff, there's a number of issues that have been raised, and I guess the one thing that I would leave you with is the design of the site itself has been done with thought, and I do commend the applicant for putting forethought into the design of the site. There's a berm along Stryker Road. They've limited the truck traffic to residential neighborhoods by having it all oriented from the south portion of the site. They have oriented the majority of the things that could be objectionable, things like the dust collection system, things like the ongoing forklifts and whatnot, to the portion of the building that's furthest away from residences. I'm sorry. The back of the building from the nearest property line is 460 feet away, right? So that's and again, at 60 feet for Stryker Road, that's 520 feet to the nearest residential property. They have put a lot of thought into this design, and I commend them on that. I would say too that the design itself addresses many of the concerns that folks have read or have brought up, excuse me. So based on that, there are a number of conditions that I recommend in this proposal. If those conditions are achieved, the City of Independence will believes, absolutely that it meets, the criteria of the Independence Development Code, and we would recommend, approval of the application, with those conditions. So I realize that was kind of long-winded, and I apologize, but thanks for listening to me. Are there any questions from the commission?
No. Actually, I just have one, I don't know if this is the time to bring it up or not. On the traffic, study.
Yeah.
They ask that now?
Yeah, and Gerald Fisher is here, part of our, we can do it now, we're at the end. So
I don't know.
you can ask.
Okay, my question was, we've already gone over that the building was allowed, the developer is allowed to have less parking space because even though it's a large building, there are going to be very few people working there, 35 total at this point. So my question is, when the traffic study was done, and then they had 25 in and out dump trucks and 5 in and out coming from the other plant. So 30 trucks in and 30 trucks out for the south entrance. So then when the study was done, they used those numbers that they were given, and yet it said city staff asked them to use higher numbers based on the size of the building, even though the size of the building you've already indicated is highly mechanized and won't employ that many people. So my question was, why was the traffic study done with a much higher range when that's not what's going to be seen there?
I'll let Gerald answer that.
So the numbers based on the trip generation per 1,000 square foot of gross floor area. Even though that a majority of the inside of the plant is automated, we look at it from the standpoint of what's the worst case scenario and do the traffic impact analysis based on worst case scenario.
But I kind of wonder why we do that when we've already established that they're not going to have that many people there because we're getting there to get to have a smaller parking lot.
I guess my only answer to that is I have to assume that at some point in the future, they have the ability to remove things out of the building and change the traffic impacts based on what's going on inside the building. That's why we use the worst case scenario. What they're proposing is not the worst case scenario. And as long as the traffic impact analysis meets the requirements under our code, even with a worst case scenario, the development complies.
I understand that, and I read that, but it just seems like it kind of inflates the numbers and makes everybody much more concerned about a traffic pattern that's not going to happen. Because if they change the usage of the building, would not whoever's doing that have to come back before the city and say, we're going to redo this whole thing and have a whole different program going on?
Yes, but you're comparing traffic impacts with parking. Fred deals with parking and the parking fees. That's a planning function within the city. The traffic impact analysis is public works and engineering. So we look at these things completely separately.
But if they changed it, wouldn't they have to come back and?
Yes. Yes.
So I still.
It's always better to go by the worst case scenario. Then you don't have any surprises.
And it kind of moves up the anxiety level. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, I think we are ready to have public testimony now, right? That's fine. Okay, the applicant can speak and others in favor may speak, so I will call up the applicant, please state your name and Mr.
Is this on? No. Is the green light on?
Just flashing red.
Oh, you can do battery maybe?
Good evening, City of Independence Planning Commission, members of the city staff, and also members of the public. My name is Laurel Barat. I'm with Udell Engineering. Our address for the record is 6-3 East Ash Street in Lebanon, Oregon. And joining me this evening is Brian Vandetta.
Third time.
I can hold my.
It's still not keeping it up.
Okay, that sounds a lot better. Great, thank you. So I'll start from the top. Thank you for having us this evening. My name is Laura LaRock. I'm with Udell Engineering, Land Use and Surveying. Joining me this evening is Brian Vandetta. He's the principal of the company, civil engineer and land surveyor. And also joining me this evening is Landon and Wyatt Pegg. And again, we're happy to be here tonight. So we have a PowerPoint and Karen might be my go-to tonight. Could pull that up. I'll start with saying thank you. Fred gave a great overview, so I will try to keep mine short and concise. I know there's a lot of people here to speak this evening. So as Fred mentioned, the proposal before you tonight is for the creation of a new facility for Western Interlock Incorporated. You want to go to the next slide?
So I'm trying to share it on Zoom, sorry.
Thank you. So the site, as I'm sure you're all aware by now, is located to the east of Striker Road, north of Hoffman Road. On the east side of the property is bordered by other industrial property as well as a railroad site. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The property is located in a heavy industrial zone. The heavy industrial zone abuts the site to the north and the south. To the southwest of the site is light industrial. Also the residential single-family airport overlay, as well as the Independence Airport. And then to the east is more industrial property, heavy industrial and light industrial on the other side of the railroad. I'll have to go to the next slide. So as Fred already kind of gave a really great overview of how the site functions, let's go over that again briefly. And I'll have some of the rest of the development team come up and speak more about the facility and how it operates. So the site is pretty long, so I've broken it up into two different sections. This is showing the north section that's just to the east of Striker Road. As Fred has mentioned, there's kind of two main access points to the site. This one is showing where the employee entrance would be. It's on the northwest portion of the site. This is where anybody that would be coming to the office, where employees would be coming into park, any visitors to the site would be entering at this location. Also, on this portion of the site, you can see where the proposed parking lot is located. This will be where the shift employees will be parking their vehicles. To the north of the building, you can kind of think of it in three different sections. There's an administrative office portion on the very north. In the middle is the actual processing portion of the facility. And to the south is where the materials are into the site. Also to the south, there's a paved section. This is where the truck traffic would come to drop off aggregate material into the hoppers and then do a turnaround before leaving the site off to the Hoffman Road exit to the south. As Fred mentioned, there's significant landscaping along the east side of the site, bordering the frontage of Striker Road. Included in the proposal is also street frontage improvements along the east portion of Striker Road. And then all of the industrial traffic, anything that's coming or leaving the site will be coming into the site. I'll have you flip to that next slide. So this just shows the close-up of a parking plan. As mentioned, there is 35 employees. Different jurisdictions govern parking requirements differently. Some based on where offices are going to be for manufacturer industrial buildings. Others based on the square footage. This particular one, as we mentioned, is the 89,000 square feet building. Parking for the city of Independence is based on square footage, but in this case, as it is fully mechanized, it's not, it would be an overabundance parking in this particular site. So what they have planned for and what they have proposed is having adequate parking for both staff that's on site, and also for the shift change. And then some extras, just in case there's anybody visiting the site, deliveries, dropping off, things of that nature. You got it. What's the next one? As discussed, there's been a lot of thoughts gone into the site planning for this design. This really comes from Wyatt and Landon's experience with their other facilities, knowing how the site is going to operate. They're really taking their experience from other facilities and really stepped it up on this particular site. One of the things that was really important to them is to have some really good street frontage appeal, knowing that there's an air park community next to them. So as Fred indicated, there's a berm that's going to be planted with landscaping. The berm is quite a bit larger than what this code standard would require. It's heavier, has 4 landscaping that's required by the code, and also has some site security as well. You can go to the next one. On the south portion of the site, this is with Hoffman Road bordering it to the south, with Ash Street as the main entrance to the facility. This is where the aggregate trucks would be coming into the site and leaving. As you notice, there's a security fence with a check-in gate, again, keeping safety onto the site into the surrounding area. You can go to the next one. And then I think we're going to flip to go 2 more slides. There we go. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off. You're looking at a floor plan, which is great for people that are in that field or land use. We love looking at floor plans, but for most folks, I think the really purpose of starting might be more meaningful is hearing an overview of how the site operates. So I'm going to hand it over to Wyatt and Landon.
Thank you. I think it would be appropriate for me just to explain a little bit about us as we start. And you should know us, that we have been looking for a site for about 5 years, considering Seattle first, Seattle, Tacoma area for our next facility. And after a lot of digesting and realizing really who we are as a people in this community, from this community since the 70s, have determined that it was best that we keep all of our larger financial investment in people and who we are and the products we produce here. Quality of product, quality of people, know the people. We do have distribution site in Seattle, and we are expanding that. But we chose through a lot of research to come here, and then the independent site came up that we chose it seemed like it fit into our vision. And so that's when we started down this path several years ago, and are excited that we now have this opportunity to start moving forward. The process now of manufacture, I think I'm just going to expand on that a little bit, is that we basically take aggregate, sand of different sizes, combine it, haul it in with cement, and put it in a mixer, have a recipe, put it in a mixer, and make concrete. And we make dry cast concrete, and we make specifically landscaping products, paving stones, retaining walls, all smaller units to be handled on basically pallets. It's not product that's cast in place and the cast has to wait. Our forming is done immediately. So our machine cycles about every 15 seconds, producing about 10 to 12 square feet of product at a time. Then it would be carried by conveyor into a curing room, basically a tropical climate, 100 degrees, 95% humidity. That is maintained around the clock. And the product sits in there for around 18 hours and it is ready to be cured. Not ready to be cured, but ready to be packaged. So as it's conveyed back out, it is put on pallets to do stacking, maybe other further processing. And then as it is palletized, put on a wood shipping pallet. And that wood shipping pallet goes out the door where you have a lime green on the right-hand side. That is an automatic stacking system, which we will handle a 2-shift of production without a man or a forklift. And that is done so that we can maintain day shift for handling of product. And our product then is stored in the yard, like the yard is now presently used for Scott's fertilizer. We will be using that same area. They are there on that area until we decide and determine that it's best that they go somewhere else. But we're utilizing all that asphalt area that's there. It's put in by, was it Cascada several years ago. And that's all made it a pleasing site. And we also was very pleased with this site in regards to being close to the railroad. And we could complement the area with basically an undeveloped site and make it beautiful. At the same time, make a product which makes jobs, and I think a lot of people appreciate our product. And so as product that is stored, the trucks will be interacting with raw material. We have raw material coming in, finished product coming out. Basically, pound for pound. We're not doing nothing but curing cement, making a concrete product that is inhandleable, and then it gets shipped back out. So the storage yard is efficient, but we do like it. That it does have potential for railroad in the future, not to be used now. But the site just has and as far as ingress, egress, coming in off of the south with trucks is very desirable. Keeping car traffic away from truck traffic is very for us is a safety issue. For the community, I think it's traffic flow, pleasing. And so we like how this site fit, and we do appreciate that we get had the opportunity to utilize this. Look forward to satisfying everyone's fears, I guess you would say, and your approval. Brian, talk a word.
So just to finish up my portion of the application before I hand it over to Brian, just taking a quick look at the elevation. So as you can maybe tell by looking at these plans, especially on that lower elevation drawn on the north, there's kind of 3 different types of roof pitches and heights. You can see on that lower north elevation is in the middle on the white portion is showing the height of the actual office and administration portion. There's a larger sloping roof pitch that will be the actual main facility. And then the taller, especially you can tell again on that lower one, is where the actual the bench plant will be located on the right, which will be the tallest portion of the building. So it does range, I think there was incorrect numbers floating around, but it ranges from 35 to about 70 feet in height overall. And then on the next one, it's just another elevation. So this is just showing a different view from the west. It shows those differences in roof height. And then I think just to sum it up from my perspective is on the site plan, Fred talked a lot about distancing and things of that nature. So overall in the city of Independence, there is just a 20-foot setback that's required from Striker Road because it's adjacent to the development. As Fred had pointed out, this building supersedes that. It's almost 165 feet from the road. You're adding the road at 60 feet, that's considerable distance. So when we're talking things about height and noise and vibration, all of those distances were well thought out in this design. That is why the location and orientation of the building was selected, is to help not oversee and exceed the City of Independence Development Code standard, but also to take in some of those impacts and to mitigate them the best way that we could. So with that, I'll hand it over to our civil engineer and he'll talk about the rest of the application.
Thank you, Laura. Again, my name is Brian Van Devin with UDEL Engineering. I'm going to touch on a few general utility aspects, some grading and drainage, explain how we've got the site set up to deal with those items, and then maybe different groundwater concerns that were raised by some of the neighboring property owners in their testimony. And then close out again, maybe being repetitive, but with a few of the site characteristics that we've carefully laid out and put together to mitigate and minimize impacts to surrounding properties. So I'll start with the storm drainage. Storm drainage is always a concern. We want to make sure that we're very mindful. We follow all of the city's rules. We minimize or mitigate potential impacts. Those 2 impacts are water quality and water quantity. The City of Independence has a very thorough stormwater management design standard that tells us that all of the impervious surfaces that we are creating and generating in our project, all the stormwaters that leave those impervious areas have to be treated before they leave the site. So our plan is to collect all of those stormwaters in a pipe system and or swale system within the footprint of the area that we're redeveloping, and then pipe them to the east portion of the property that is significantly lower and has an existing drainage system already in place. We're going to enhance that by modifying the swale to meet some of the current standards for water quality treatment. And then we're also going to provide flow control for that stormwater so that the discharge rate into the lower area is mimicking that of an undeveloped property. And that's a significant comment, undeveloped property, because the standards in the Independence, or the design standards in the City of Independence say that we don't get the benefit of existing impervious surfaces when we're developing. We've got to take the property model for stormwater back to its pre-developed state, calculate how much water will be running off the property in that state, which is similar to a meadow and a pasture, and then provide flow control to limit it to that release rate, which is going to significantly reduce the amount of water leaving the developed footprint and going east than what is now doing so today. That is a great benefit for the system downstream. This site is equipped with a pumping station. It's been around for years. It's a duplex system that discharges the stormwater when it exceeds certain levels off-site into the public stormwater system. We're planning on maintaining and utilizing that. We're planning on controlling the flow as it gets to that pumping station, again, to ensure that we're not increasing the rates ultimately leaving the property. The next civil function would be sanitary sewer, and it's a little bit simpler. There is a substantial system in Striker Road that has capacity for the site development. We're going to be discharging primarily domestic waste from the site, and there will be on occasion that some of the curing waters after the settlings have been removed and disposed of off-site in a proper manner, those waters may be discharged to the sewer as well. The third civil aspect is water usage. There was a comment in the testimony from the neighbors that they were concerned that the City of Independence water system could not accommodate such a massive industrial development, and it would have a negative impact. So I put some general numbers together, and then I'm going to correlate those industrial numbers to what they would compare to for residential development, and kind of bring it full circle. But processed water, we have the benefit of an existing plant that's already functioning, so we have a very firm understanding of processed water necessary to make these products. We're going to be using about 4,000 gallons per day. And then we've got a domestic water usage. We know the number of employees that are going to be on the site. That number is estimated based on a table in the Department of Environmental Quality's sewer discharges, which equates in equal out, if that makes sense. I got a little convoluted, but the domestic water use is estimated at about 525 gallons per day. Then we'll have some irrigation water. We don't know the full impact of irrigation water until we do our final design with the landscape architect, figure out how much of the landscaping is going to be drought tolerant and not require irrigation. But the two numbers, processed water and domestic water, equate to about 4,500 gallons per day. An average single family household uses about 4,500 gallons per day. So this massive 90,000 plus or minus square foot building is going to equate to an impact of about 13 single family residential houses. An extremely low impact on water system comparable to other industries that are out there. So those are the three primary civil functions. Now I might get a little bit repetitive, but as Laura pointed out, and Wyatt's team and our team, along with the building designer who's not present tonight, spent an awful lot of meeting times together discussing site layout to minimize potential impacts that we had identified. Again, just to reiterate a few of those, we have truck access separated from the employee visitor access. Truck access is gonna come off of Hoffman on a paved access road. We paved all the way through the site, including the turnaround. Very important because paved access roads minimize and eliminate the dust threat. Employee and visitor access will come off the Stryker again on a paved access road. And they'll go into a parking lot area again that is paved. The paved travel surfaces minimize and eliminate the potential for the dust concern. We went with setbacks that were larger, significantly larger than what the development code allows. Comparison, Stryker Road, the setback requirement of the development code is 20 feet, we're at 165 feet. North and south property lines, because we're not adjacent to residential development, are actually a 0-foot setback. We are in excess of 100 feet on both sides. On the north, we're at 104 to the office and 154 to the main building. On the south, we're at 68 to the gravel hopper and 141 feet to the main building. Some other considerations for site dust control include, and Fred did mention this, but I'm going to repeat it again because it is of significant importance. The aggregate delivered to the site is delivered as a washed aggregate, correct? It's dumped from the truck into the gravel hopper. There will be no dust emitted because the gravels are wet. All the access roads and maneuvering areas are paved again to minimize and eliminate the threat of dust. All of the interior equipment, which has the potential for emissions of dust, are controlled with filtration systems in those areas. There was an issue raised regarding the potential impact to groundwater in the area and the potential for those higher groundwaters to transmit equipment vibrations out from the building and to the property line and potentially beyond. We have a geotechnical engineer under contract. I say we, Wyatt pays Bill, I don't. Wyatt has him under contract. They've begun their process. They've done borings on the site. They've installed a piezometer on the site in the lower lying area. Initial piezometer readings have the groundwater table that are seasoned at 5.5 feet plus or minus below the ground surface. The significance of that, when you compare it to the preliminary planned height of the building, that groundwater table is over 13.5 feet below that. Add a few feet for the footing depths, and we're going to end up with approximately a 10-foot separation from the footings to the ordinary high groundwater table. During the weather months, that separation will eliminate that potential for transmitting the vibrations. Just in the physical nature of the separations. Then there will also be a proper foundation design by our structural designer that will absorb, as Fred mentioned earlier, those vibrations from the equipment and then dampening material around that foundation. Again, repetitive, but noise mitigations. We've got increased setbacks. We've significantly increased the buffering and landscaping along Stryker. And in general, the design will comply with any applicable PEQ standards for that noise requirement as well. With that, I would conclude the portions that I plan to discuss with you tonight. And I thank you for your time.
So, thank you again. I'd just like to close it and to say that we have read the staff's recommended conditions of approval, and we do encourage you to grant approval of the application with those recommended conditions. Thank you for your time. Yes, ma'am.
I have one question. I was wondering, we talked quite a bit about the screening and the vegetation on Stryker Road, but there's no mention of any along the truck route. Are you going to plan any sort of, because looking at the gradient, it looks like the road is down a bit as it drives in. but I'm just wondering, are you going to plant trees or anything along that road?
So, if you can pull up, yeah, you can just scroll down there. So the property narrows in that particular section, and to allow truck movements back and forth with, the travel aisles, this does not leave a lot of room left to landscape on those areas. What is proposed on there is security fencing, no facing screening. But on those particular neighbors, they're also in high industrial zones and used by industrial users. So the landscaping in those areas will be less than what's proposed, along the frontage that Electra Residential.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions?
Can I ask you a question? Can you speak to your, sort of your tolerance for existing sites that, I mean, and then kind of what that process looks like, or presuming you've gone through it or whatnot, I mean, you can just speak about sort of comparing an existing site and what, like the things you've done to mitigate there and compare to here.
Yeah, so I will actually turn that question over, but to answer that broadly, it's hard to make a comparison between these sites. They do operate quite a bit different. This one, they've taken a lot of experience from their other facilities, to improve and enhance the site. But to answer your specific question, I'll turn that over to you.
Can you repeat the question?
I was just asking if you could kind of compare sort of their DEQ sort of regulatory mechanism that you've worked with in your other facilities, and sort of talk about the mitigation that you've done at those sites, and then or maybe compare that to this site and this project. Sort of given your experience already in your other sort of facilities.
Well, contrary to popular belief, obviously, our industry, the dry cast industry, is a very clean industry. And there is not a lot required. There's a lot of opinion. But what we do, primarily our biggest concern would be dust for our employees in the building, not outside. But we do have dust control. Bag house is, keeps air moving in any critical areas. All the silos have bag houses on them. So there's no dust from that generation from truck traffic. But there's all asphalt. Our Rickville site does not have that. It's all gravel. We use water there. Water truck times a day. What else would be give consideration regarding, it seems like dust and noise would be the two bigger concerns, and quite frankly, those are probably lesser concerns. Not that they're important, but there's other larger things that we know as an industry that's bigger hitters than those are, because we always have been able to satisfy those. And we are very confident we wouldn't be going to this site if we did not know that we could meet the requirements.
Thank you, guys.
So I guess just to piggyback on Alex's question, Mr. Mayor, so you don't currently have any DEQ permits for you?
There is none required for what we do, but we will if there's some necessary on a new site.
Thank you.
So I think when Fred said he visited, he said that 1 meter from the machine, the decibel levels were above 85. With the dampening system, with it being inside the building, immediately outside of the building, do we know what the decibel levels are expected to be?
No, you don't know exactly. I mean, that's variable. I go to our facility when there's been all this concern. I walk our fence line and we go measure it, and it's hard to keep track of it because the highway, which is 30 feet from our fence, produces about 80 decibels. And when it's quiet and we can hear the birds chirp, we're producing about 50. So that's at our site that has no sound room. We were in Denver, Colorado last fall looking at a facility. And when we walked out of their employee room in the plant with 2 machines running, not 1 machine, with 2 machines running, you couldn't hear the machines. And so when you was outside, there was absolutely no noise from the machines, which is what everybody's concerned about, but there is no noise from them. That's in Denver, Colorado. We plan on having a facility that's be comparable to that.
Thank you.
Other questions? No? Thank you very much. All right, we will now hear testimony from those in favor of the application. And I have the speaker cards, call up the people who indicated they are in favor. There are some cards that they didn't mark, so I'll ask if you're in favor or not. So in, it's just in the order they were given to me, Nathan Godsey.
It's Coatsy. Yes, I'm.
I apologize. Yeah, would you like to speak in favor, please?
Yes.
Come forward and state your name and address for the record, Mr. Coatsy.
Yes, oh, yes, my name is Nathan Coatsy. I'm a resident at 10130 Rail Road. I share mailboxes and driveways with Wyatt. And anyways, his property is across the street from my property. And anyways, as far as their business operations, I have 4 boys. I hear much more out of my boys than I do out of their operations. As far as cleanliness, by appearance, I don't see anything that has ever concerned me. Because I would, need to bring, or make aware to them. I know that they're pretty hyper vigilant. I see their sweeper trucks and other things, not on the roadway, but within their property. And I don't see anything extruding from the property, and they keep a very meticulous property. So with their due diligence, where they're at, I would presume that they would be even better stewards with where they're looking to go. And so I'm for them, I know in the business community around them, when I first moved in 2020, I would go and try to support the local community, like the bargain shed. And I told them where I lived, and they're like, yes, Wyatt's a great guy. And so he's got a great reputation, both in business and within the community that he's already in. And so I'm for him. I think he'd be a add value and benefit for independence. And so I just wanted to have the opportunity to speak and say that as a neighbor, with my own concerns in society, he's probably one of the least of my concerns. And so, anyways, thank you for the time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, Andrew Duncan.
Madam Chairman, I did check positive because there were 2 choices, and that's where I personally lean, but I'm speaking, representing some other views. I would prefer to address it in the neutral area.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Clyde King. Mr. King, please state your name and address for the record.
Clyde King, and address is 15695 Salt Creek Road, Dallas, Oregon. I own Sea Ray Trucking. We've been hauling their aggregate in for over 20 years. It is wet, damp, there's no dust when we dump. And we go to concrete facilities all over Oregon and Washington. Theirs is hands down the cleanest, most organized. Those pictures you saw up there inside the control room are not photoshopped or cleaned up for the pictures. That's the way they run their business. You can tell just by driving by. I mean, the yard, everything's always clean, well taken care of. And I also own property in Rickreall, close to their facility. There's never been any vibration or noise on my property there. So there's no foundations or anything cracking. You can stand outside early morning, not hear anything. So I just want to speak to those 2 things. I recommend the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. King, for your testimony. Next is Jackson Lacey. I know this one wants to speak, but you're here in favor. Do you want to make any comments in favor?
Yeah.
I'm Jackson Basie, I live at 225 East Avenue, Falls City. So, I've known them not in depth, but off and on the majority of my life. I moved here with my parents in the second grade. So I've been around the area. I'm a general contractor. There's several people that I've worked for specifically right near where the plant is. I'm currently actually building a garage, like pretty much next door to where they're at. As far as everything I've dealt with, I've actually toured their plant. And it's not like I have some crazy ties with these guys, but just the third party who's like, I don't know a lot about pavers. We've looked at getting in pavers. We've done some. I toured the plant and I was very impressed with the cleanliness of it, because I've also worked in a mill and a number of other places that were very industrial. And I would argue that theirs is by far the cleanest I've been to, as well as inside and out. I was in there when it was running. Significantly quieter than any plant I've been to. So if they're going to make the extra effort to have equipment that keeps it quieter, I'd be even more impressed. But just more so, we put a house in Rick Grill and a few other places, so on that side of it, from just a bystander standpoint, there's several things in it that I don't see any foundation problems. I know lots of people that live in Rick Grill, and I haven't heard anybody complain about the things that have been brought up. There's also not a super great place for water to drain in Rick Grill. They don't seem to have any water flowing up from where their site is at. So there's just several things that have been brought up, particularly here, and I don't know many of the people in the airport. Fortunately, I'm not going to pretend to know their struggles, but from the people that are close by and people I know, I haven't heard anybody have it, right?
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak in favor?
Yes.
Would you please state your name for the record? There are a couple of speaker cards that aren't marked, so I don't know if you're in favor or opposed. Are you in favor?
I would speak in favor.
Please do. Thank you, sir. Please state your name. and
Yes,
your
my name
address.
is Jim Wixon. I live in the air park here. And I personally know Wyatt Pay. And although not well, I can say that he is a very good person, a good friend, and well regarded by his community. This is a very successful guy who has a lot of business acumen, because he got the idea on which his whole business was founded as a young man, and expanded that to the business that it is today. So I'm very much in favor of helping him, and also I think we have a perfect location there in the industrial area to the east of Stryker Road. There's already plenty of industry there, and although we are somewhat numbed by the tidal wave of numbers, it's very hard for us to evaluate those as we sit here. But I would say you can very easily satisfy yourself by going to Rick Grill and looking at what he's got there. Now, I've never heard any complaint against his business, and I think it would be ideal for him. It would be a break for us, and especially a break for the city of Independence, which prides itself on an up and coming community. I think it would be a perfect addition, and a payroll and a substantial tax contribution. And if anybody's interested, they may certainly approach me. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Did anyone else who filled out a speaker's card want to speak in favor? No. All right, next we will hear testimony of those who are neutral. Mr. Duncan.
Chairman.
Neutral stance. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Andrew Duncan. I'm not sure about this. I can hear my voice. Is that a good level? I live at 636 Mooney Street in Independence. And that's all you need, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Unfortunately, most of our community has not heard the information we've had today. And so we've been faced And I'm basing my comments on the report we received and the proposal we received from the city plan. We, all concerned citizens, are not opposed to this plan. But we do open this opportunity to address the planning commission with our concerns, and they are real concerns. These are not just noise. Let's start with a bit of background. In 1974, our housing development was established just west of Stryker Road. In 1981, the city enacted a zoning ordinance which established the RSA, the residential zone, and the industrial zone east of Stryker. Under section 48 of that ordinance, it permitted concrete plants, but specifically excluded sand and aggregate processing. In 2012, it was rewritten, becoming section 37 of the current code. At that point, sand and aggregate exclusion was admitted without input from the homeowners and for no apparent reason. Our primary concerns, based upon the report we received, relate to factors that impact local residents' health and welfare. They are air quality, noise, vibration, traffic, and hours of operation. These are detailed in the document, which you have in your packet, we've distributed. And they are supported by the federal, state, and local legislation and address the potential health and welfare impacts. A brief conclusion is printed in red at the end of each section for clarity. Air quality. There is no DEQ assessment accompanying this proposal. Our concerns arise from silica dust, P10 and P2.5 particles, and their very, very significant health impacts as detailed in the report. We recommend that before proceeding, the city require complete DEQ assessment of air quality and copies of the current and past DEQ assessments from the existing plants. Noise. The sound emission report relates to noise level 1 meter outside the block machine enclosure as 85 dB. It's just a number. We were going, that's about as loud as standing on the shoulder of I-5 in busy traffic. We were going to demonstrate 85 dB sounds in this chamber today. But it's so excruciatingly loud, we decided not to risk damaging people's hearing in this environment. But we are willing to demonstrate it to you if you would like to come. We need baseline engineering data on current day and night noise levels around the site. We need independent assessment by a qualified engineer of noise levels around the West Lindsay facilities in Riverview, Olympia. Independent engineering assessment of potential worst case noise scenario, demonstrating that the plant will comply with DEQ standards prior to operation. Vibration. This is a real concern. The manufacturer of the plant, of the machine at the heart of the plant, has a sheet with detailed and specific measures to be taken. They've been addressed briefly. They are not addressed in any detail in the application. We need baseline engineering data on current vibration levels at permanent locations around the site. We need complete stamped engineering drawings showing the foundation design and isolation measures delineated in that statement. And we need a post-build but pre-startup assessment by a qualified engineer showing compliance prior to operation.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Transportation analysis focused on car traffic. Our concerns relate to if it's a 20-hour day, that's a truck every 20 minutes. If it's an 8-hour truck day, that's a truck in and out of that plant every 5 minutes. No mention of extended acceleration times, considerable noise impact on the residents south of the area, or the impacts on school buses. We recommend Public Works reviews the transportation analysis. I'm going to skip around.
Your 5 minutes is up.
I
Can you please
mean,
wrap up?
one sentence, Ms. Peg, we relate very well with those next to us. We hope we can do the same. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Duncan. Next is Lee Nielsen. Mr. Nielsen, you want to speak? Please state your name and address for the record.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And my name is Lee Nielsen. My wife Sherry and I live on 613 Piper Street. We're part of our property is pretty much directly across from the new proposed site. We have no objection to Western Interlock building and operating here as long as all DEQ and other regulatory agency requirements are met and our quality of life is not changed. We would like to continue to enjoy our backyard and open our windows for fresh air at all times like we do now. The water issues on Hoffman was addressed. That is an issue. When we have heavy rains, that's an issue here in Independence. It's an issue for the air park. We also would hope that the city would uphold all the ordinances that are in place regarding this facility. And I'm also concerned, the thing that wasn't addressed is the aggregate dumping of the aggregate. And that would be a noise issue. It's closer to Stryker. So I would like to see some more data on their noise mitigation for the dumping of the aggregate. And the other thing is we want to be good neighbors and we would expect the same from Western Interlock. Their efforts to enhance their business should not negatively affect their neighbors. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen, for your testimony. Next is Alan Wright. Mr. Wright. Let's go to the name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Alan Wright. I live at 610 Airport Way in Independence. I've submitted some prepared remarks, which I'll read. Apologize for reading those. Of course, they were prepared before this testimony. So some of this, has been addressed. So my name is Alan Wright. I'm a resident of Independence, and I've owned my residence at 610 Airport Way since 1995. I'm also the current president of the Independence Airport Homeowners Association. This is my second stint as president of that association. The Independence Airport Homeowners Association is a community of 160 homes, and there's also another 51 homes in the North Airport, which has a separate association. I speak to you because the Western Interlock development is a concern of many airport residents. The Independence Airport started in 1974 as residential development. We are a long-standing residential neighborhood of Independence, and like many other Independence neighborhoods, we were zoned low-density residential. Our residents are small business owners, government workers, employees, retirees, the same as any other Independence neighborhood. My children, like others in the air park, attended Independence schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, and now productive members of society. I say this to point out that we are a residential neighborhood like any other residential neighborhood in Independence. And as a residential neighborhood of Independence, we deserve to have our government advocate on our behalf to protect the health and safety of our residents and to protect the livability of our neighborhood as afforded to any Independence resident and neighborhood under the law. Based on the Western Interlock proposal information received, there appear to be many areas of concern regarding health, safety, and livability that have not been adequately addressed. Specifically, we are concerned by impacts on air quality, noise, vibration, traffic, and light pollution for all of this. However, we may have other concerns which we learn when we learn more about the project. I was specifically interested in hearing Mr. Wyatt when he said, I believe it was Wyatt, he said that noise and dust were not a concern, but there are other bigger problems. So we very much like to hear what the real problem. And layout here is about, dust and noise. I'm looking for assurance from the Independence Planning Commission that my Independence neighborhood will receive the advocacy and protection afforded to any Independence residential neighborhood as provided by law. I would also like to offer my assistance and the assistance of IHOP, the Independence Airport Homeowners Association, to the Planning Commission as might be helpful and productive. And I would just ask that the Planning Commission consider tabling this application until we have detailed information on how we're going to meet all the requirements as expressed by Fred Evander in his recommendation. I appreciate the work that has gone into this by the planning department, and I appreciate the investment that is being made by Western Interlock. But there are a lot of details that haven't been fleshed out, and we're just learning a lot of this right now in this hearing. Still, many more details we've heard from Fred that we're just saying, sort of waving our hands at this point and saying, thou shalt comply in the future. So I would like to see the details about how they're going to comply with these requirements. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Actor. Next is Bruce Patton. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Bruce. Microphone now, we've got to work. Bruce Patton, 805 Sky River Drive, Independent. I'm a licensed civil engineer, California, retired license for financial reasons. I was a major project manager at a nuclear power station where the last project I managed was used fuel or spent fuel storage for 2 stations. And management of a $25 million construction contract for one of the dry gas storage facilities. The city has a large list of requirements in their report. I reviewed them. I think there are some, they're pretty good. There's a couple there that they missed. The one was, you did a good job. The issue of concrete batch plants and washing concrete batch plants. He mentioned there was going to be a settlement pond to allow the material from that wash and other dust recovery processes to separate before it was deposited in the sewer. I think the city should include that in their list of, what do you call that list of list of conditions that you would regret it deeply if there's cement discharge there eventually. By the way, I'm 6'4". That's probably 30 feet tall. The building is twice as tall as that. This is going to make a big, large visual impact. I agree with all the points Andy makes and all the points Andy makes in the submitted list of questions. I think the city should require an independent study by a licensed engineer of the design of the noise suppression system they are planning to install in this plant. As part of that design, they should include getting the source noise information from some of their other plants, their other 2 plants in the state. That should be a condition before starting operation. I worked a lot around, I've been around a lot for my first job as a civil engineer with installation of 150 yard an hour batch plant. And I've worked around a lot of batch plants. One thing that was mentioned by someone else, the noise of aggregate, large aggregate dumping into a hopper is quite loud. I realize they only use a pea gravel or a smaller aggregate, but I would suspect that the noise coming from the dumping of aggregate into their hopper is going to be a concern, since it is perhaps the closest noise producing source in the factory.
And a 6-foot high berm doesn't mean very much at all, frankly. A 6-foot high berm, maybe with a 20-foot high noise wall would make a difference, but don't take too much credit for a 6-foot high dirt berm with trees. It does not do much for blocking noise. Also, in reviewing the traffic analysis, when the trucks are concrete cement aggregate trucks, especially if they're doubles, are not very maneuverable vehicles. When they're turning onto or off of Hoffman Road from their plant, and there's heavy traffic on Hoffman Road coming from both directions, I really don't think that is a good solution. I don't know how many concrete cement trucks they're going to be having coming in today, or how many aggregate trucks are coming in today, but I just don't see that as whatever answer they came up with is not the right one. That is going to be a mess down there. It's going to slow traffic up on Hoffman Road considerably. And plus, where they come out is kind of blind to people that are going way too fast on Hoffman, where they pass in front of Stryker and there's a truck in front of them. Aside from that, if they do resolve the noise issue,
30
vibration issue to our satisfaction, I feel they could be a good neighbor. And I wouldn't have any objections if they do meet all of the key requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patton, for the testimony. Next is Richard Webb.
Hello.
Please state your name and address.
A lot of the information I have are provided prior to the meeting was based off of.
Sir, can you please?
I'm sorry, Richard Webb, 741 Rock Street, Independence, Oregon. A lot of the information I provided was based on the city's report and or the information that was published and presented in the report. A lot of information I felt to be ambiguous. And when the person said something, then they come. Hypothetically, I'll go without that just real quick. They said it was surrounded by industrial zone. No, it's surrounded by residential on Stryker Road. It's surrounded by multiple family residential on Highway 51. It's surrounded by residential on the south side. Yet it was described as surrounded by industrial. That is, you know. Anyway, my main concern is we have groundwater problems. That is a dump site. That is next dump site. That was an EPA condemned site, that entire area. And the price value and everything didn't go up after it was cleaned up. And the values of it went crazy after it was cleaned up. But that's neither here nor there. The problem is we've got water problems. It's been identified on the maps. It shows on the maps, satellite and from data risk analysis. The existing water, it's outlined in blue, is providing you guys. And we put vibration in, and their own machine says, if you put it on rock, or you put it on groundwater, we don't know where it's gonna go. So I would like to guarantee you that back their information that they're providing is saying, hey, there's no problem here, that they're good writing. That they're not gonna affect our groundwater, they're not gonna affect our air, they're not gonna affect our environment. That's all we're asking. I think it's great, we're building a factory. A lot of their numbers though, they say, oh, we got 35 employees. Parking spaces, all the rest of them. How many employees do they have at Wheel? You said same automation? Well, they've got 71 employees up there. The numbers just don't come out. So when I read the information, trying to digest fact is very, very difficult. When I look at the facts and not if you read this report, you will see how many ambiguous comments, ambiguous statements are there without a factual answer. They use words that have two meanings. So I wrote the stuff I wrote because I didn't feel comfortable that this proposal was much more than a sales brochure. Also, when they said that the building was 170 feet tall, guess what? The tallest building in this area is a tower, Hoffman Road, it's 150. The water tower is 124. This will be the tallest building in the city of Independence. That's 70 feet. Although the blueprint I was given said, I'll give you, Jeff said 170 feet. But in their own writing, in the next paragraph, they write, we have averaged the height to comply with city regulations. But now the average height is now 70 feet. That is misleading. I'm sorry, it's in print, it's in writing. That in writing, that's what we were given to make a determination of how viable this industry would be in our location. And I hope you can understand that I'm not against anybody in business, but I assure you that. And the other thing is, I had said because of GPS, modern technology, electronic world, all the entrances should be on Ash Street, all of them. They can put a fire exit over there in that corner to get out, but when they have a shift change and they only have so many parking spaces, you can't bring 35 employees in. You have 50 parking spaces, they don't comply with ADA. Did not have 688 parking places, and you can't have an exchange of 35 employees, that's 70, right? Am I wrong? 70 versus 50 parking spaces. Is that math right or wrong? That's what's in the report. There's only be 35 employees there. Okay, and also the trucks there's a 60-foot circle. There's also conveyor systems. And if you're hauling aggregate out on the highway and you're making it wet, I think it's law, and you are exposed to a legal amount of decibels to go under the limits, according to the law. So anyway, thank you very much for your time. You can read any of my reports, and anything you see that I wrote was based on the report.
Madam Chair, that's 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Okay, have a good day.
Next, I have Paulette Olson. State your name and the record.
Yes, my name is Paulette Dan Cos Paulson, and I live at 767 Muscombe Street in Indianapolis. And this evening, I learned some new facts that mitigated some of my fears, but not totally. One of them was the average maybe decibel outside of the building of perhaps 50 decibels, whereas inside it was 85. My concern is, well, not even sure, is there a 20-foot wall? And is it a sound absorbing wall so that when the aggregate does come out, will that mitigate the sound of the aggregate and also the sound from the 85 decibels inside the building? We love to sit outside in the summertime and in the wintertime and enjoy the fresh air that Independence allows us. And the sounds are very disturbing, even at 50 decibels. And if it's constant, especially during the night, that is a concern. Many of us leave our windows open. So that is one of my main concerns. The other concern I have is the water table. I understand it's very unstable and rises and falls, and we're not sure where it is exactly. So hearing the vibrations of noise in the evening or in the nighttime when trying to sleep, that is a concern. I'd like to know if perhaps we can have an engineer really look into that issue, give us some degree of satisfaction with the result. So those are my two main concerns. I think it's great that we have more industry and independence if it's controlled and it's not going to affect the close neighborhood here. So that is my concern. Thank you for letting me present.
Next, I have David Ullman. State your name and address for the record, Ms. Ullman.
David Ullman, 621 Aranca. I'm a retired engineering professor from Oregon State University, also the co-author of the report that Andy gave, and I'm also on the IHOP board. I just wanted to add one thing that hasn't been mentioned, and this is in the report that we were provided. It implied that the proposal said there would be an operation from 3 AM to 11 PM with 2 shifts. And there's regulations about noise between 10 PM and 7 AM, OAR 348-035-0035. It gives levels of 45 dB. It sort of seems like the proposed hours of operation are not consistent with that. So I'd like some feedback on the hours of operation. Also, the berm, 6 feet berm, I fear that may not be sufficient for the truck noise unloading the aggregate. I was somewhat surprised in the proposal, the lack of firm engineering numbers. Being an engineer, I look for numbers, I look for, how many dBs it's gonna be, how it was analyzed, those kinds of things, and I found that lacking in the report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Williams. Karen, do you have any other speaker comments? Would you like to speak, sir?
Yes.
Yes. I'm gonna podium, state your name and address for the record.
Am I too close? Okay. My name is Robert Fitz. I live in Independence. And I am probably one of the longer residents in the area. We came to Independence in 1951. I've seen a lot of changes that have come and gone. I have done business with Wyatt Peg and the Peg family. And I'm here to tell you, they're a first-class operation. And so far as I am concerned personally, I see a lot of people putting up some kind of a gripe of one kind or another, which I don't think is founded. And I would be saddened if Independence did not let this go through. I think you'd make a grave mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitz, for your testimony. Those who wish to speak. From the podium. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Shane Carvalho, I live on 626 Moody Street, Independence, Oregon. I came up here in 2020 looking for opportunity. An opportunity, I did find that. Being a part of the community, I've gotten to know some small business owners. And getting to know these small business owners, getting started up after the COVID pandemic, it's been tough. But these communities show grit and persistence. So with that being said, me being as a young man, I want to welcome opportunity to this community. I want to see these small businesses thrive in a little bit that fits around our economy. I think it's a great deal and great venture. The only thing that I would be a little cautious of personally is just the fact that, I personally don't mind the noise or whatever that may be. But I work my heart and soul into the house I have today. So I guess whatever may be, if I have the equity of my home is affected in any way, shape, or form, that would be a little bit of a bummer, but overall, it brings opportunity for it. Thank you for your time.
For your testimony. State your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Melinda Short. I live at 606 Sky Ranger Drive in Deer Park. And I've listened to city planners, pretty rosy recommendation that this be approved. I've heard a lot of kind of fuzzy math and fuzzy reports.
We have to step a little closer to that microphone.
I've heard some, but a little bit of fuzzy math and some fuzzy reports, pointed out by far more qualified people than me, on what these effects might be. I guess my main question to you is, after what you've all heard tonight and what I mean, we haven't seen maybe probably everything that you have seen, but what you have presented to us tonight and what we have been presented, would you want it in your backyard? That's my main question. I mean, my lot is 150 feet long, and I have an idea of what 165 feet is. And I can hear my neighbor talking in his hangar. And I can hear a lot of noises that are a lot less than 100, than this plant is going to be at 165 feet. So that's my main question to you as our planning commission and our city planner is, would you want this in your backyard or across the street from you? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Rocha. All right, now is the opportunity for the applicant to present information based on what you heard in the testimony from the community.
So thank you again. Thank you for everyone who came out and spoke tonight. I just enjoyed seeing public participation in these processes. So a lot of these concerns, we had a great opportunity to review these concerns in advance. Some of these are not surprising from the land development industry. We hear similar complaints or concerns from other developments. On this particular one, we really do start from the top. So it might have been better to start the presentation with a little bit more of an overview about the planning process and the review process where we're at in the whole development stage. So once the site is selected, we run through with our development team and looking at the Independence Development Code as well as state and federal regulations. Going through that process, we make changes to the development itself. So if it's not cited right or there's room for improvement, then we take these opportunities to do so. So at this stage in development, it really is the preliminary design phase. So these are not the final construction plans for the development. So really the purpose of this review and this plan submitted is to set the stage to say, yes, this proposal does meet the Independence Development Code provisions and is able to meet state federal regulations upon the next stage. When those construction plans are actually submitted, reviewed, as from the engineering specs come out, and the review really gets underway by city staff and any sort of third parties to take a look at that. So I don't feel a need to run through and address the specific comments. I feel that we may have done that already in our earlier presentation. Other just to say that a lot of thought has gone into this design, the placement of the building, how it's oriented, how traffic flows through the site, things like aesthetics, were all taken into consideration in the design stage of this building. So with that, I'll just hand it over to Brian and you can say any closing remarks.
Well, after that was very well said. I don't think I have anything to add. I'll just reiterate what Laura said. She's right on cue. This is a planning level process. We don't get into the full nuts and bolts of design, foundations, and all of the things that get stamped and sealed and signed. If we get at this level, it would be cost prohibitive to get through this level. We don't want to design something and then have something come out of the planning process that dictates change. We have to redesign it. We get through the development code process. We demonstrate general compliance with the development code. We address all of the conditions. Then at our final design stage, we incorporate all of those concerns into our design and we confirm that we're not going to create or hinder the surrounding properties during that process. And with that, I offer myself, if you've got questions beyond that or feel we haven't properly addressed some of the concerns. Thank you.
Any other questions for the planning commission? Yeah. No. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Madam Chair, before we go on to the next thing, I just do want to reiterate that we did receive some written testimony over the weekend and today, and the written testimony has been submitted and is part of the packet.
Thank you. All right, I think we are ready to close the public hearing. If we've done all that. Mr. Allen.
Madam Chairman, just an observation. I'd like to express my appreciation to Fred Evander and particularly Kari. We've approached them for information. They've been very forthcoming, come forward very quickly. Kari has been absolutely wonderful and very cheerful and upbeat, even though obviously we're asking questions and concerns. And I wanted to put on record how much I appreciated their information, their quick responses, and the way they responded to our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. And closing the public hearing. 55 p.m. All right, deliberation and discussion by the planning commission. We've heard a lot of information tonight. And a lot of information to digest. Go ahead.
I guess I would like to reiterate the point made that these are the preliminary designs. This is the preliminary stage. A lot of what some of you are asking for comes later when they have to get specific information to meet the standards the city and the state set. So that's why you haven't gotten some of the numbers tonight, because this is a preliminary plan.
Thank you, Becky. And pass it over.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight and sort of the thoroughness, comments, thoughtfulness of input. Yeah, I reiterate, I think that's spot on, and Laura, with your comments, so we're spot on. This is the first part of the process, and comprehensive to run through every last goal. I feel the conditions that have been placed as sort of the backstop for all this, I think are well founded. I think the noise concerns are well founded, but I sort of the site is a complicated site just in terms of layout and whatnot. And I think they've done a pretty incredible job of trying to mitigate as much as possible the placement and ensuring egress and whatnot. So.
Is there anything?
Yeah, I agree. I want to thank everybody who gave testimony today too, and just agree with them, as we said before, just a preliminary hearing, preliminary basis, and just take a look at the, and hopefully all the conditions that will be met.
I agree with my fellow commissioners. Want to thank the community for coming out tonight. It is a pleasure to actually see community engagement. Many times this commission sits here with only no one sitting in any of these. So when you have an opportunity to participate in the land use planning process, you can see it's very important in our community. So thank you very much for participating. We do appreciate it. But I agree that with the thoroughness of conditions, I have been frustrated at times with this process by wanting to know more about things that we are on the front end preliminary. I wanted to know why can't we impose additional conditions in certain circumstances, and remind that at that time that approval process for many of those things that we wanted to find out. And I think this is a good example of that. We don't know yet what we don't know. But there's a process in place where every one of these things will be checked, identified and checked throughout the process. So I'm in support of these conditions. Any other questions for our city staff? I think we're ready for a motion then. Do I have volunteers to make the motion tonight?
I move to approve the site design review application file number SPR-2023-01, adopt findings and conditions and the staff recommendations as provided in the staff report.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, was that unanimous? Aye.
Yes, it was. Thank you very much. Okay, we do have a little bit of other business to conduct tonight. I think we're ready for that.
Yeah, take a little break. And before everybody goes, I just want to say, hey, the trolley's running, in town. So make sure the hot dog trolley. That's right around town. It's free. Everybody's welcome. Yeah. Yeah, I tried my best. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What are they? You got it. Sitting up there, you can hear. Yeah, he said we have real problems. I think they're real. I think they're real. I think they're real problems. Okay. No, but I mean, he was saying in relation to, in relation to the effects of the community. Oh. Okay, like, I didn't take it, I didn't, it should be, I took, I get, he said it literally, I take it. I will, so I, part of it. Yeah. Yeah. One thing, I would say. I just like that's to me. I think I understand, no, I get the difference between. Yeah. Well, I think that's probably. Every hearing we do. I've sat in your shoes. I've been in planning commission, certain, I've been in school board situations. Never managed. I didn't say that, but it's all about, yeah. But an ongoing headache now, time, sitting. I would hope that I honestly. All of us. Yeah. Because this is more investment, more something. All the stuff that. Well, there's some neighbors up there. I just hasn't been all. Oh, I'm sure, but there's also no, it's not quiet inside. Oh, and this one, I don't. Just because it's president, that's
I know. Yeah, so I would, you know.
I could feel this, yeah, you know, okay. I don't want to stand, and feel every time it's, every time that machine cycles, I feel forever. Every time I'm done with the bag, I'll make sure. That would be the fun. And, you know, that
That is part of the deal. Right.
So, you know, I don't know what the situation was. This water goes in there. Like having large, like, sweatshirt and. I understand. And I mean, maybe they ask to the council. Or they- So, hey, we can talk about. I like brown.
I honestly haven't read that part yet. We'll get there. This one's, yeah, it's 100%.
Good to see you.
Most of the time, they come in.
Yeah.
We don't see. So that's why.
Oh, that's so.
I'm gonna restart our meeting. Hold on a second.
Yeah, right.
Commissioners will come to order. Okay, the next item on our agenda, code interpretation.
Yes, please. Thank you. I sure appreciate it. Let's talk about this real quick. So we got an application in. And it was for a shed roof building, and a shed roof building, when I look at the code. We do not seem to allow a shed roof building. Now, I include in your packet page 161, Karen. Sort of depiction of different roof types, right? And hopefully you like that little cartoon there. That's a flat roof building, a shed roof building, a gabled roof building, and then a hip roof building, right? So you folks all familiar with all of those? I know. Perfect. All right. Now, a shed roof building, does not seem to be allowed. Now, when we look at this, we look at the Independence Residential Design Standards. I'll just go through it. It says G roof forms for pitched or hip roof residential buildings. It says, essentially, when you go down to roof forms shall consist of a primary gable or hip roof with one of the following additional roof forms granted to the street. And so it says that those last two are allowed. But it doesn't really speak to flat roofs. And it doesn't really speak to shed roofs. And so based on that, I would say, okay. It seems clear to me that a shed roof is not allowed at the city. I told the folks that And they said, would you mind asking the planning commission about that to just confirm that that's the case? And I said, okay, I am more than willing to ask if that's the case. Now, I'll just say, you'll see that the purpose of the residential design standards I noted in there on the staff report. Okay, I did note the staff report. Been there. The purpose of the residential design standards is to establish a base quality for the design of new homes, foster pedestrian activity, promote the historic residential development patterns found in the city of Independence. Now, I'll just say, when you look at house types that we got in the city of Independence, I think all of us would be hard pressed to name many shed roof buildings in the city of Independence. Most of them have a gabled roof or a hip roof. And so based on that, it seems to me that the code does not allow shed roof buildings, but I just want to make sure that I'm reading that right. So based on that, my recommendation is that you folks say, yeah, no, only gabled or hip roof buildings are allowed. Or I feel like you could potentially say flat roof buildings are allowed, because when you look at roof forms, it just says for pitched or hip roof residential buildings, they're at the top of that page. And so potentially these standards don't apply to flat roofs, but then it doesn't necessarily apply to a shed roof. And so, I don't know, I think it probably just makes sense to keep it the way that we've been interpreting it and saying, yeah, it's pitched or hip roof buildings. Shed roof buildings are not allowed in the city of Independence. What do you folks think?
Because it doesn't say it. It doesn't specifically prohibit it.
I would say though, because there's no language giving specification of what is allowed, it's saying that it's not allowed.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
I would agree.
It says roof forms shall consist of a primary gable or hip roof, with one of the following additional roof forms granted to the street. When I read that, it's like, there's a shall and there's two types that are listed.
I think I agree with that interpretation. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I mean, I don't have a value judgment. I just think
I think it's probably right. I mean, honestly, like, I feel like if we think it's a dumb standard, we should probably rewrite that to include shed roofs as well. But I mean, I don't really see any way that.
If you're going to continue to have this, continue to want to, I'm sorry, those are chicken hands. If you want to continue to have the typical Independence historic type dwelling, then you don't want to have the flat or the shed roof, because that doesn't fit in with what the city's been trying to encourage in new developments.
Right. What are your thoughts?
Well, if I were an attorney, I'd argue that it's not prohibited, but I don't think that's the answer. I think it's probably just grammar that could be stated a little earlier personally.
So basically we want to establish the continuity of this type of roofs that have been used, historically.
Yeah, that's how I think they're intended to work right now.
So you can argue right now that they're not, go back to bug. Right, is there a form or a function?
Yeah, to this, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Wow.
He's never been happier.
For those of you who don't know, BUG is an acronym that we use to explain zoning. That's easy to remember. Zoning deals with form, use, and geography, and you can manipulate each one of them in a way that's beneficial to a community. And so it's good to hear planning commissioners use that acronym. So.
No, this is just a clarification.
Okay. I mean, so are you guys all on board with it being?
I agree with your assessment of how it's, to be interested in.
Do we want to formalize it so that 10 years down the road?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Go ahead and make a motion, Becky.
I mean, that I'm sorry, my brain's we allow only the pitched roofs or hip roofs in residential buildings within the city of Independence.
Cable or head roofs, the standards are intended to only,
Right.
yeah, only apply to cable or head roofs.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Cool,
Need for someone, good?
yeah. Okay, but seriously, there's no video for tonight, but I will say, ride the trolley. It's like, it's pretty, I mean, it's cool. It's pretty good. It's pretty fun. I took my first trolley trip, right, we got many, right before this meeting, and I got on, there was 9 people on when I got on. I rode back from Monmouth and there was 14 people on that. It was like, whoa, this is really cool. So
I would get that.
but what's that,
Where do you buy that?
you know, this was free swag. I grabbed this one for my dad, or else I'd give it to you.
That's right.
If I get my hands on another one, what's that?
I start telling them somewhere in town.
Yeah, that's right.
Do we have, Fred, do we have any other meetings coming up?
Yes, we do. We are still planning on having the Brandy Meadows public hearing on April 24th. That will be at 6:30. That's also on a Monday. I would imagine that there will be some folks at that meeting as well. We will see if we're able to make that time frame. Potentially, if we had a meeting today that potentially might push that back, but keep that on your calendars for 6:30. 6:30.
I'm sorry, what date is that again?
April 24th.
April 24th.
It's three Mondays from now.
Okay.
Karen, just a question. All of us submitted the statement of economic interest? No.
Oh, I haven't looked.
Hey.
But you have until the 15th.
I know.
No.
All right, any other business tonight, folks? No? Let's move to the, or I will set the motion. All those in favor of adjourning?
Hey Sally, excellent job tonight. Yeah, no, you handled this all well.